Now it's on. Great. Okie doke, guys, we are live. It is 7 o'clock, and welcome to the continuation of the Town Meeting of Camden. I'm Deb Dodge. I'm your moderator this evening, and the meeting is now called to order. We're going to begin by standing and saying the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I hope everybody has either a town report or an agenda, and has everybody who's a registered voter gotten their placards? Okay, this is how we're going to vote. A few other housekeeping reminders. Please mute your cell phones if you would, unless you are public safety folks that need to have them on. And if you do receive some kind of a call, you need to speak to somebody, we'd appreciate it if you would take your conversation out to the lobby. And I also always like to start by thanking the folks that have helped put on our town meetings. And yesterday, our deputy moderator was Beth Ward, our registrar, Elaine Davis, and all 12 of the ballot clerks that worked during the day yesterday. Chief Farley and his crew for setting up the polls for us and taking them down, very expeditiously, by the way. A special thanks to Katrina Oakes, our town clerk, and Kendall Espinoza, our deputy town clerk. They worked days in advance to get ready, and 12 hours yesterday making sure everything went smoothly. Dave and Juniper for getting the Opera House ready for us tonight. Thank you all very much. As usual, we run our town meetings by the Maine Moderator's Manual, and it's the 6th edition. And a few reminders about our procedures. Once an article has received a motion and a second, any introduction or explanation from one of the select board or the staff will be given before we open up the floor for discussion. And Maine law requires that you be recognized before you speak to any issues, so if you'd raise your hand and come down to the microphone, which is right down here, and be sure to keep the microphone close to your mouth so everybody who's watching this live can hear you. And you need to be recognized by me, the moderator, and any questions or comments you have need to be addressed through me, and any answers that may come from the select board will also be done through the moderator. They're not to respond necessarily directly to you. And no one gets to speak a second time till everybody has a chance to speak the first time on any issue that's under discussion. And the other thing is that under Maine law, if there is somebody that's going to be speaking that is not a town voter, they need consent of the town voters in attendance. We need a 2/3 vote for people to be allowed to speak that aren't town residents. So we have Audra Kaler-Bell, our town manager, and Jody Hanson, our finance director, may be answering some of the questions tonight. So I need a motion to approve to allow them to speak to the town meeting tonight. All those in favor? I say that we have a 2/3 majority. Thank you. Thank you so much. Is there anyone else here who's not a town voter or citizen who needs to address the town meeting? Okay, thank you.
Possibly some other town employees, but not that weren't mentioned, but.
Possibly?
I mean, I don't know if there's Bill or Jeremy or.
Mr. Kelly, our town attorney. Jeremy, do you anticipate needing to?
It's hard to say.
Do I have a motion to allow all town employees to speak to the town meeting? Is there a second? All those in favor? Thank you all very much. We'll do that in one motion next time. So when I call for a vote, do your job raising that up really high, and if something looks really close, we'll let you know, and we'll need to have you keep your cards up so we can do a count. A little note about motions for amendments to any kind of a motion that has already been made and seconded. We always deal with an amendment first before we go on, and if an amendment has been moved and seconded, discussed, and then voted on, based on what happens to the vote on the amendment, if the amendment passes, then I will reread the main motion with it as it's been amended, and then we get to vote on that. If the amendment fails, I will reread the main article as it was written, and we will then vote on that. And the other thing to remember is that any amendment to a motion needs to be what the main moderator's manual says is germane, means it has to be pertinent to the motion that's been made. The main moderator manual says, and I will read this, a town meeting warrant is both a warrant and a protection. The greeting in a warrant typically says to the constable or other person to whom it is addressed, quote, "You are required to notify and warn the inhabitants of the meeting. A warrant warns voters of the scope of the subjects and actions that may be taken by a town meeting. A voter who reads the warrant and concludes that she or he is comfortable with any outcome under it should be able to go fishing on town meeting day in confidence that the warrant statement of town meeting business has been reasonable and fair outer limits. The concept of scope defines those limits." And another note, Dave Miramont wished that he could be here today to participate, but the state senate is having a double session, so he is unable to be here. And Vicki Dudera wasn't sure if she was going to be able to make it because the House may be as well. Vicki, did you make it?
They're doing double sessions.
They both are doing double sessions. Okay. Now, before we get to the results of yesterday's voting, are there any opening remarks from our select board?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Bob Falciani. I'm the select board member whose name most people can't pronounce. What I wanted to just discuss briefly tonight was a year ago, this town meeting, we had the bittersweet opportunity to see the end of a tenure of a person who had given most of his life to the town. I know he doesn't want to hear it, but he's going to. That was it was a record that will probably never be broken. I've been actively on the select board for 2 years, 19 more years. I don't know, John. But this year, we feel strongly that a good town never forgets those. Many of you who have given so much to this town to make it what it is. But this year, we wanted to honor John, as most of you probably know, as the person we dedicated the annual report to. And I'd like to, for the record, just read that dedication to John. I know it makes you feel uncomfortable, John, but we need it for what you contributed and for what your family contributed to this town. In 2019, the town of Camden is pleased to dedicate the annual report in honor of one of our long-standing, tremendously dedicated community leaders, John R. French, Jr. Since retiring in 2018, at least for now, from the select board after 7 consecutive 3-year terms, John has remained an active and engaged community member and leader. Whether he's attending select board meetings to speak as a member of the public, participating formally as a member of the budget committee, or continuing the decades-old tradition of discussing all manner of town issues with residents and officials who frequent his auto repair shop. John's dedication to the community remains unwavering. In 2018, John proposed that the town form a charter commission to revisit the town charter, our guiding document. As one of the members of the newly fledged commission, John has once again stepped up to serve the community. During his tenure on the select board, John served as chair for several terms, including his most recent one. He was elected in 1997 alongside the late Leonard Lookner. And while the two did not always agree, they were dear friends and harbored an immense respect for one another. As John was fond of saying, the disagreements always ended there, gesturing to the door of the French conference room, formerly the Washington Street conference room, that was obviously renamed in his honor when he decided not to seek re-election as select board member. John's acceptance of all opinions and patience with those that differ from his own is among the myriad of qualities that continued to serve John and the community well during his legacy of public service. Each time John ran for select board, he was not only successful in his bid, but never failed to receive the largest number of votes of any candidate in the race, further demonstrating the community's confidence in his leadership. John spent most of his boyhood in Camden, living for a time in Curtis Island, where his father was the lighthouse keeper. John matriculated in the Camden school system and went on further his education in carpentry. Instead, he became an auto mechanic, and his career continues today as the owner and operator of Coastal Automotive in Camden. In August 1997, John married Julie in a ceremony on Bayview Street in Camden, and the two remain happily married today. Their sons, Bill and Christopher, both reside in Maine and have 4 children between them. John's grandchildren, ranging in age from 4 to 23, hold a special place in his heart. With his son, he participated as a pack leader in both Boy Scouts and Cub Scouts for a number of years. Prior to joining the Select Board, John was a committed volunteer firefighter in Camden for 21 years. Through his tenure on the Select Board, though his tenure on the Select Board overlapped briefly with his time in the Fire Department, he remained committed to facilitating excellent and economical public safety solutions from his spot on the dais. Always quick to credit others, John would often remark on the dedicated community leaders that serve on all manner of town committees. While immensely respectful of his position in the process, John was always with a laugh or a follow-up question as Select Board Chairman. He made it clear that all voices were important, even on nights with lengthy agendas. Always thoughtful and compassionate, John has been quick to help those in need and has remained a dedicated friend and advisor to many municipal servants. Additionally, his desire to recognize others always usurped the accolades he has received from the community. John has always championed community engagement, encouraging residents to participate and use their voices, both at regularly scheduled Select Board meetings and town annual meetings each June. In June 2018, he told Susan Mistapich of the Camden Herald that he used to joke about getting a bus and picking up residents to bring them here to the town meeting. The town meeting is their chance to shine, he said to Mistapich of residents. Their time to vote and hold their hand up and say yes, no, or maybe. It's the town meeting government, not a council. It's all about them. Town people are the legislative body. Thank you seriously from all of us, John, for all you've done.
I know you wanted me to tell him he was out of order, but couldn't do that. So now for the results from yesterday's secret ballot election. There were a total of 551 votes cast, not a record. Article 2, to elect by secret ballot, 1 Select Board member for a 3-year term. Select Board members shall serve as overseers of the Poor and Wastewater Commissioners. Mark Ratner was reelected with 448 votes. 2 directors of Maine School Administrative District 28 and CSD number 19 for 3-year terms. Rebecca Flanagan was elected with 414 votes. Peter Orrin was elected with 422. 1 member of the Personnel Board for a 3-year term, and Lavana Snyder was elected with 34 write-in votes. 6 members of the Charter Commission. Nancy Cottle Johnson was elected with 348 votes. Mark Haskell, 331. Chris McLean, 367. Steve Melcheski was elected with 57 write-in votes. Robin McIntosh was elected with 34 write-in votes. And Jim Hurd was elected with 32 write-in votes. Thank you all for being willing to serve, and congratulations. Article 3, shall the town of Camden amend the zoning ordinance to permit hotels in the traditional village district to allow food service to the general public with special exception approval from the Zoning Board of Appeals as long as there is no increase in the number of seats licensed as of January 1, 2019. The article passed 455 yeas to 49 noes. Article 4, shall the town of Camden amend the Camden zoning ordinance by defining formula-based food service establishments and to allow them only in the highway business district. The article passed 326 to 171. Article 5, shall the town of Camden amend the Camden zoning ordinance to allow small commercial marijuana cultivation facilities as special exceptions in certain zones. The article passed 445 to 92. Article 6, shall the town of Camden amend Chapter 6 miscellaneous ordinances by adding a new chapter, Local Food Sovereignty Ordinance. The article passed 458 to 80. Article 7, shall the town of Camden amend Chapter 8 Camden Police Ordinance by adding a new ordinance entitled Clean Community Ordinance. The article passed 506 to 31. The school budgets, both school budgets and the continuances of the budget validation process passed yesterday. The 5-town was 412 yes to 121 no, and SAD 28 was 43 yes to 115 no. Everything passed. Now for our floor articles. If you already have them, you have your town report or an agenda handy. Article 8. Shall the town vote to set October 16 or the next regular business day thereafter and April 16th or the next regular business day thereafter as due dates for taxes and to fix the rate of interest on unpaid taxes at 7% per year? Is there a motion? Second? All those in favor? Opposed? The ayes have it. Article 9, shall the town vote to authorize the Select Board and Treasurer on behalf of the town to apply for and accept grants, gifts, real estate, and other funds, including trust funds that may be given or left to the town? Do I have a motion? Second? Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Article 10, shall the town vote to authorize the Select Board to dispose of tax-acquired property in any manner which the Select Board deems in the best interest of the town of Camden, except that the Select Board shall use the special sale process required by 36 MRS number 943C for qualifying homestead property if they choose to sell it to anyone other than the former owner, excluding the Apollo Tannery property as described in Book 3148, pages 278 and 280, excluding the fee interest in the land burdened by the Coastal Mountains Land Trust Declaration, recorded in Book 4093, page 81, shall be disposed of subject to the requirements of Article 10 of the town warrant from the annual town meeting held on June 10, 2008, and also the Apollo Tannery property can only be disposed of by a vote of town meeting. And as a reminder, I will just summarize the requirements from that Article 10 from 2008. 1, the buyer must use the property for an acceptable use as listed in the Apollo Tannery redevelopment report. The buyer must demonstrate financial viability. If sold as a land for jobs rebate incentive, create a certain number of jobs within 5 years. A restrictive covenant on the deed will protect the trees on Washington Street. The Select Board shall incorporate any deed restrictions to enforce the above conditions. The Select Board shall utilize as many of the guiding principles in the Tannery redevelopment report as practicable. Is there a motion? We need a motion and second first. Is there a second? Any discussion or question? Yeah, John, would you, please?
Just a question, has this changed the wording on this one? It seemed a little different.
What's changed has, except that the Select Board shall use the special sale process required by 36 MRS for qualifying homestead properties. That's in reaction to a new state law that requires special procedures for acquiring through any liens or selling properties that are owned by the elderly. So that's based on new state law, so that's why it's been inserted.
So they still have the right to put it for a bid?
Yes, this is for homestead property. That special language applies to homestead property.
Right, but I mean, you're
As
talking
oppo-
about tax-acquired property, though, as a whole.
But if Bill, you can
I don't even
amplify.
remember that. When did that get added? I don't remember that being in.
This year.
The short version is it's a added protection for people 65 and older that requires the property to be actually listed with a realtor and go through a rather truncated, a short process, but it creates the opportunity to maximize the return of the homeowner that was not there before by added process of possibly a market sale.
Are there any other questions or is there discussion on this? Yes, come on down.
Hi, my name's Roger Rittmaster. For those of you who know me, you know that Sagamore Farm is near and dear to my heart. And listening to this in the audience, it occurred to me that the Select Board, if it wanted to, since Sagamore Farm is tax-acquired property, could sell the property without agreement from the town. For those who might not know, it's a 77-acre piece of land, which it sits on the base of Mount Batty, beautiful wooded land and a field where our solar array now is. So, to me, something of this size and importance should be something that would require the town citizens to vote on if the town wanted to sell the property. So that would be my comment.
I'd like to follow up with that. Can either Bill or anybody, was the Sagamore Farm, it's been owned by the town for many, many years. Is there anybody have any institutional memory of whether that was acquired through tax liens?
It was.
I think it specifically says in lieu of taxes, so it was given to the town in lieu of taxes. It was the
In
Borland
in the
family.
40s?
1946, I believe.
I have a hard time believing those people just didn't pay their taxes and we took it because they have I think it's a little different, but I think technically it would fall under the property
Would
that could
fall
be
under
sold.
this.
Yep.
Mr. Late? May I ask you a question? As an abutter, do you have any other information regarding the acquisition of the Sagamore Farm property? Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions or discussion on this article? It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please raise your placards. All those opposed? 1, 2, 3. Okay, 5 opposed. The article passes. Article 11, shall the town vote to authorize the Select Board to dispose of personal property pursuant to the town's purchasing regulations as amended, and further authorize the town manager to dispose of personal property pursuant to the town's purchasing regulations as amended, which has a market value of less than $3,000. Is there a second? Is there any discussion or questions? All those in favor? Opposed? The ayes have it. Article 12, shall the town vote to authorize the Select Board, following a public hearing, to transfer an amount not to exceed 10% of the unexpended balances from any budgetary category to another budgetary category of the annual budget, subject to the limitations contained in this article, during the period from April 1 to the date of the annual town meeting in June? The transfer of unexpended balances from various budgetary categories shall not increase the expenditure in any budgetary category by an amount which exceeds 2/12 of the budgeted amount approved for that budgetary category by the annual town meeting. Is there a motion? Second? Thank you. Is there any questions or is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? 1. Article passes. Article 13, shall the town of Camden authorize the Select Board to undertake a capital improvement project consisting of the replacement of the gate and structural support beams of the West Dam, including design work, transaction costs, and other reasonably related costs to the project, and appropriate the sum of $290,000 to be paid from the town's unassigned fund balance, interfund borrowing, to be paid back over the next 10 to 15 years. There is a financial statement that can be found on page 92 of your town report from our town finance director that relates to this. Do I have a motion for this article? A second? Thank you. Any discussion or any questions? John? I could just put the stool down there.
Well, I just have a question about, I mean, trying to get understanding, I guess maybe Audra will clarify this. I know you want a total of about $1 million for several different projects. Some of them are straight pay for, and two of them was one was 260 and the other was 4 something.
The others, this one's 290, the next one's 360.
And they want to borrow and pay it back over a 10-year package loan, so to speak, no, 0 interest.
Yes.
But we're still going to see the budget impact for the next 10 years on the tax rate for 26,000 and 29,000, and what's the other one, 400 and something?
The other one's 360 in the next
360.
article.
So 36, so you'd have those 2 payments for the next 10 years. I thought we had enough in the surplus to just pay for it and get it over with, rather than impacting future tax rates with the payments.
So we certainly could, and in this situation, what we would normally do is we would take out a bond for projects like this, However, our unassigned or undesignated unassigned fund balance is so healthy that we have available cash flow that we can essentially lend to ourselves. And the reason why we're suggesting doing that is because having that money on hand, I think, is going to be really important in the future. We're in a really good position financially as a town right now, where we have good cash flow, so we're not at a position where we have to do any sort of, tax anticipation note borrowing. We're buffering ourselves if there's a recession or something comes in the future where we don't want to cut services, but we also don't want to impact taxpayers. And, there's a myriad of other emergencies that we could face as a town in the future where it would be handy to make sure that some of this surplus that we've built up, we retain over the years. And we are, proposing to use a portion of it because it is quite healthy. So about $335K total between tax reliefs and projects for this year. But I think that $650,000 that we're talking about using for interfund borrowing, it's a really good solution because over a 10 to 15 year period, we're going to save ourselves about $110,000 that we'd normally be paying to a bank in interest payments. We're able to get some projects done, but we're not, drawing down on those funds that we could need for another purpose in the future.
But even with $1 million drawdown, you're still well above the policy for the amount for the undesignated fund balance, correct?
We certainly are because
Right.
it is so healthy.
So there's a fine line there between this fund balance and the voters, taxpayers.
Absolutely, and
That's
I
what
mean,
my concern is.
I think that, given that we don't know what's going to happen in the future, I know that this might be, a more conservative way to sort of manage the funds of the town, but I think that there's a lot of benefit in doing it this way.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other follow-up questions or comments regarding this article? Yes, right.
Ray Andreessen, Cove Road, Camden. Before we vote on this, I'm just wondering if the select board knows or the town manager knows of any other six-figure major projects that are coming up next year that are going to be, we're going to be facing the same type of vote on.
I mean, I think that the dams continue to surprise us as they've aged, and we are doing the normal maintenance every year. For a while, the town was able to get away with just doing normal maintenance. They appear to be getting to that time when major expenses are coming up. This West Dam, I personally find really frustrating because we don't want to look at the West Dam right now. We've been focusing on other dams, and so, we might want to, I would like to be able to put fish passage there. But if we put $300,000 into the status quo, then we might have to say, oh gosh, we wish we had done something else. So this came as a definite surprise. But some things with the dams have to be done. I'm trying to think of anything else, not that we know of, but.
Was the question about general capital projects, Ray? Other general capital projects or just dam projects?
Not just the,
General.
Okay. Well, yes.
Public landing.
Yes. We've developed, with Audra's help, worked on a long-term capital plan for the town, and we review at least once a year, maybe twice, where we have capital projects that are deferred. We have to manage the bottom line of the tax impact, and yes, it is flowed out, and there are a number of six-digit type futures, and the idea is to levelize that and try to maintain our tax increases at a nominal level as we go out. We'd love to do it all, we can't. It's just humanly impossible. How we fund it, to John's question, is we have to be creative and smart about it, and I believe, too, the funding mechanism that Jody and Audra came up with is sound fiduciary responsibility. It gives us the flexibility and the cash flow, which is key. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, and so we want to be a little conservative in that regard. To John's point, we could take it out and it's taxpayers' money. And just pay it down and not pay it back. That's a little too aggressive at this point in time. I could go on and on about it, but I think that's the bottom line. But yes, there are.
Oh, Rossin Avenue Bridge,
There,
there's so
there are
many.
numerous capital projects hanging. We don't know to that one whether or not MDOT will help us do whatever we may want to do at Rossin Ave. And there's many like that on the list that we'll have to deal with.
Mark?
I was just going to say, I think the select board all feel that auditor's decision is the right decision to do, keeps us well prepared for the future, which we don't know. As everybody knows, infrastructure's failing in so many different ways that are unexpected these days. To have a little extra cushion is real important, and it would have a less of an impact on the taxpayers in the future than it would save them now.
I mean, I think it also puts us in the position to have the option of using this strategy for some of the other projects that are coming up, and save ourselves potentially a lot more than $100,000 in interest.
Yeah, and I would say to add to Bob's point about the capital improvement projects that we have, I think by our last count, when we totaled the list of everything over sort of a 10-year period, and I'm not saying that we're going to spend this much money, but we could spend up to about $28 to $30 million, and that's just the stuff that's kind of popped up that, we know we're going to have to address at some point in the future. So there's a lot of infrastructure and capital needs out there that we need to have on our radar.
The library's green roof.
Are there any other comments or questions? Yes?
Yeah, Pete Kalajian.
Solar farms.
Hi, guys. Nice to see you all. Question I had was, in those $30 million projected for infrastructure projects that you sort of foresee on the horizon, things like bridges that are crumbling, have you given any thought, or is there any particular review process going to be in place for looking at or vetting those processes in the light of climate change and the known projected impacts on water movement, sea level rise, temperature change, species change? I think it'd be important that we somehow codify or make sure that process, we're looking at this infrastructure down the line and saying, hang on a second, maybe we just can't replace that bridge because this river will be too big. Something like that.
Who would like to answer that up there?
So I can say, a good example of that, Pete, this year, we were looking at the seawall at Harbor Park has, eroded because, we're experiencing more intense highest annual tides, and it's overtopped more frequently than it ever has been before. So the select board is talking about how do we sort of reimagine that area, given the fact that we know that if we just sort of replace it as it is now, that's going to continue happening. And we're going to be right back in the same place that we're at right now with that particular piece of infrastructure. Also, for something bigger, when it comes to the redevelopment of the public landing, the town of Camden's been fortunate enough to be participating as part of a study that's happening for all of, I think it's 10 communities in Penobscot Bay that are looking at their commercial infrastructure, and the public landing was included as part of that, as well as Harbor Park. So that's going to be a good opportunity for us to, plan with sea level rise and climate change in mind.
Any other?
I think to that end, in our capital planning, these things are coming up every year. And they're going to continue to come up. As we take some off, others are going to be added on. So honestly, this is probably going to be a rolling $28 to $30 million, or whatever the number might be, that goes on forward. It's always, by the way, it's always been that way. This is nothing new. But to your point about the landing and the seawall, those are two great examples of things that we need to pay attention to, and we have to take in consideration what's going on the planet in parallel.
Allison?
The other thing that I would add is that we found that there's a lot of grant funding that's available for replacing infrastructure if we do it in a way that makes our community more resilient, prepares us for climate change, and restores habitat. There are not grants available in most cases if we just want to replace things as they are. But if we can do it in a better way, then there's a lot of funding available, and we definitely talk kind of ad nauseum about that and welcome additional suggestions as well.
Any other comments or questions regarding this article? Article 13, did somebody raise their hand?
Yes.
No.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Article 13 has been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Article 13 passes. Article 14, shall the town of Camden authorize the select board to undertake a capital improvement project consisting of Pearl Street drainage, sidewalk and road repair from Park Street to John Street, all subsurface and above-ground road infrastructure to be repaired, including design work, transaction costs, and other reasonably related costs to the project, and appropriate the sum of $360,000 to be paid from the town's unassigned fund balance, or interfund borrowing, to be paid back over the next 10 years. The Town of Camden Select Board and Budget Committee recommended a yes vote on this article. Do I have a second? Is there any discussion or questions regarding Article 14? Is there a hand?
It's,
Yes.
Jane.
Jane LaFleur, I live at the bottom of Pearl Street. I would like to speak in favor of this article. Any drainage work done upstream on Pearl Street will benefit those of us at the bottom who get all the runoff and all the drainage problems. So I think this is a good investment of money. It keeps our infrastructure healthy and safer, and it's good for the families that are living there and walking a lot from the top of Pearl Street and down. So I do support this item and hope that everyone else does as well. Thanks.
I forgot to mention that there's a financial statement for this on pages 92 and 93 in your town report. Yes, Pete.
Hi, Pete Kalajian again. At the risk of sounding like a broken record, is the drainage design, is there also a look at future trends in the amount of water that's going to be running off? So in other words, are we sizing those culverts and drainage? Is that all being, the design team being tasked to look to the 2080 projected water flows due to climate change? I would hope so, but I'd like to be.
It's all going to increase, so I hope the answer is yes. I actually don't know for that.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, and I'm not going to answer it because I don't know exactly what's been discussed with the engineer, but I can certainly pass on that was mentioned, and I think that that's absolutely something that we need to consider in all of our projects.
There's a question up there. Come on down. Come on down. Yes.
Steve Malcheski, Curtis Avenue. And what I'm wondering is there any long-term plan on dealing with the drainage on many streets in this town? I live on Curtis Avenue, and what's happening there is a disgrace, really. The water runs down into backyards on Park Street. My two neighbors have spent, I would say, in excess of $20,000 on their personal drainage, having to direct water past their homes. And I guess what I'm asking you, to be simple, do you have a long-term plan? And if so, what is it? Could you just give us a little short version of it?
Who would like to answer Steve's question?
They weren't, Park Street and Curtis Ave were definite candidates, but doesn't it have to do with the schedule with the water company doing work and trying to coordinate when other major projects have to happen so we don't dig up the road several times? But those issues, I believe, are very much on everyone's radar.
Yeah, and just recently, we started talking about, aside from, just looking at the drainage issues and stormwater issues when we're, improving a road, also looking at sort of what can we do in terms of trying to encourage stormwater to be dealt with in a more natural way, like being absorbed in the ground. So that takes a lot of work and a lot of planning and a lot of understanding the hydrology of the community and where's the water coming from and where can we divert it to. So we've discussed working with a local engineering firm to share an intern to help us map that all out so we can come up with that long-term plan for dealing with stormwater a little bit more holistically than just on a road-by-road basis when we're doing infrastructure upgrades.
Well, I do really think we need a long-term plan and a good look at the drainage in this town. Because it's not just Curtis Avenue.
No.
Other places.
A lot of our water quality problems are associated with rain events. So it is important to look at it in a way that doesn't just necessarily send water to the harbor as fast as possible, but also, might send it to a little retention pond, or the purchasing of the bog was actually a big part of that. And that's another thing that we might be able to get grant funding for if we do it in the way that Audra is describing. But there
Yeah.
is, Rick definitely maintains, Rick Seibel maintains is he here?
No.
Well, he's very good at talking about this.
Okay, my name is Chip Lake, resident of Camden. Has anyone ever taken a look at some of the drainage studies we've already paid for? Back in the 70s, there was a complete drainage study done all the way from John Street, all the way down, sizing all the culverts, developing a long-range plan for that whole area. I know I've seen it at one time, but I don't know if we still have a copy of it someplace.
Oh, I'm sure we do.
That is such a good point, because I'm amazed at the reports that we keep finding of things that have already been studied. I found I think you were involved in actually a McGonagall River silt study that was done in the 90s, and I couldn't believe all the stuff that was in there that, we might have paid for again. I don't know about that. I'd be interested to find that report.
Well, most of those reports are done with the technology that's...
Bob, closer to your microphone.
Is it what?
I couldn't hear
Closer
you.
to your microphone.
Closer to
okay.
your microphone.
Okay. Most of those reports are written in a time period when the engineering of drainage was different, to the point that you made about today's cities and towns are looking at the permeability. Towns and cities were built with unintentionally impermeable surfaces, asphalt roads, asphalt sidewalks, blah, 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 blah. That's causes some of these drainage things to occur and get worse. To Pete's point about the future and looking forward, you've got to look at the whole thing holistically, and I totally agree with that, which may require a little bit a different perspective. Impermeability needs to be replaced with permeability. That should be the objective of what we do going forward. It's not going to be as easy, but that's what we have to do.
Are there any other questions or any more discussion on this article? Seeing none, all those in favor? All those opposed? The article passes. Article 15, I can turn my page. Shall the town vote to appropriate $265,000 of tax increment financing revenues collected from the downtown and highway TIF districts to partially offset the cost of Knowlton Street parking lot lease and purchase, Route 1 South pedestrian project, seawall restoration, Opera House repairs, and Opera House auditorium and third floor repairs? Are there any questions or discussion?
Do we need to change on my version here, it says lot leased purchase? instead of
Lot lease / purchase? Do we need to change that?
Do we need to, it appears to be a typo, and I don't know if that's just in the version
Oh,
that I have.
lease.
Right.
It's a typo.
And I don't know if that's necessary for us to amend it, or if it's to
I
be inferred by,
don't- I
common
think
sense.
the correct word is inferred.
The moderator is just, hello? The moderator has just clarified that it's supposed to be lease.
Lot lease purchase.
Okay.
I don't think it requires amendment.
Now that you've said it, just the record reflects, so.
Thanks for catching that. Any other questions or discussions? All those in favor of Article 15? All those opposed? Article 15 passes. Article 16, to see if the town will vote to deposit any remaining funds received from the Municipal Review Committee, Inc., into a newly established landfill closure and post-closure reserve account, and to appropriate said funds for the town share of the MCSWC landfill closure and post-closure costs, provided, however, that the Board of Selectmen shall conduct a public hearing on the proposed expenditure of such reserve account funds prior to any expenditure of the same. Is there a second? Any questions or discussion? Yes, John?
Will this be a restricted fund? So it'll be just for the full?
John is asking if this is a restricted fund.
Most definitely, that's the whole idea of it.
Right, exactly.
Yes, the answer is it is a restricted fund. Yes, Allison, any more comments?
I would also like to, I think this one is slightly more substantive, but not, maybe still mostly a typo. The Board of Selectmen should be changed to Select Board.
Who writes these?
Well, I think that we modeled it off of the town of Lincolnville, and I think that
That's correct.
I know that they do still have a Board of Selectmen, and we missed that when it was transferred to Camden.
That's correct.
Allison, I would disagree that that's a substantive change, changing from selectmen to select board.
I mean,
It
I
is
was
implied
joking.
exactly who the board is that is elected Board of Camden.
No, it's a different term. I'm not saying it's really substantive. I was sort of trying to be funny. It's substantive to me.
Well,
I don't think
I
it
tell you
requires
what.
a new.
Double check it next year, the wording.
Okay. We can't change the wording now? I thought
You
because it's
could.
non-substantive, we can change the
You
wording.
can, but it's not, doesn't
I
require
would
it.
move that we amend the language to replace Board of Selectmen with Select Board.
I need a second? Is there any discussion regarding the motion to amend Article 16? All those in favor of amending Article 16 to read the Select Board as opposed to Selectmen, please raise your hand. All those opposed? One. The amendment passes. So now the article will read, to see if the town will vote to deposit any remaining funds received from the Municipal Review Committee, Inc., into a newly established landfill closure and post-closure reserve account, and to appropriate said funds for the town share of the MCSWC landfill closure and post-closure costs, provided, however, that the Select Board shall conduct a public hearing on the proposed expenditure of such reserve account funds prior to any expenditure of the same. Do I have a motion to approve the amended article? A second? All those in favor? Opposed? None opposed? The amendment to Article 16 and the motion as amended passes. Article 17. Shall the town vote to appropriate $3,698,113 from non-property tax revenue sources to be used in reducing the property tax commitment for the expenditures in the following article for the 2019-2020 fiscal year? The Budget Committee and the Select Board both recommend. Is there a motion? A second? Is there any discussion? Any questions? All those in favor? Opposed? Article 17 passes. Article 18, to see what sums of money the town will vote to appropriate and raise, net of non-property tax revenues for the 2019-2020 fiscal year budget for the following purposes to act thereon. And you all can look on page 93 for the summary totals for each one of the budget categories, and you can find the details for each on page 95. The budget has 7 funding categories, and we will vote for each of them separately, and then we'll vote on a grand total. A, for general government, the Budget Committee and Select Board recommend the same amount of $1,977,699. Is there a motion? A second? Are there any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? The ayes have it. B, for public safety, the Budget Committee recommends $2,371,748 The Select Board recommends $2,402,748. There's a $31,000 difference. Audra, could you explain the difference?
So most of this came down to employee benefits. At the time we were preparing the budget and had it ready for the Budget Committee, we had different information about what that would be compared to when we brought the budget in front of the Select Board, and we were able to correct that to more accurately reflect what was going to be needed for the upcoming financial year. So a lot of that comes down to employee benefits. In addition, I believe we added additional money to the street lights, or electricity for street lights line, and a lot of that was in anticipation of the LED street light conversion project that we are currently working on. We weren't certain how quickly we would be able to implement that project and see the savings from the conversion to LEDs as opposed to what we're currently spending. And because we didn't know exactly what the time frame would be or if there would be any holdup with this project, we wanted to be conservative and budget more for electricity and the lease of the streetlights from CMP.
I need a motion for the article. Is there a second? Is there any questions or discussion? It has been moved that the public safety budget amount be $2 million. I'm sorry, couldn't see. Come on down.
Anita Brosey Scott. I think I followed that the move or the motion was to go with the lower amount, is that correct?
No, the Select Board amount. The Select Board amount of $2,402,748.
Oh, okay, it was a higher amount. All right, that's what I thought it was the other way around. So
No.
I'm in favor of that, sorry. Because of, I serve on the Energy Committee, and we're looking forward to the LED changeover, but as Audra pointed out, we're not sure it will happen as soon as anticipated. So we'll have continued electrical costs as a result.
Are there any other questions or any further discussion? Seeing none, it has been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Public safety passes at $2,402,748. C, highways, streets, and bridges. The Budget and Select Board recommend the same amount of $1,652,700. Is there a second? Are any questions or discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Passes. D, Health and Welfare. The Budget and Select Board recommend the same amount of $25,000. Do I have a motion? Thank you. Any discussion or questions? All those in favor? Opposed? Health and Welfare passes. E, Leisure Services. The Budget and Select Board recommend the same amount of $1,133,926. Is there a motion? Any questions or discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Cemeteries. The Budget and Select Board recommend the same amount of $103,800. Second? Any questions or discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. G, debt capital contingency. The Budget Committee recommends $2,375,595. The Select Board recommends $2,437,595. Audra, would you explain the difference?
Certainly. So there was a couple of different, changes that happened. I guess bottom line, the reason why the Select Board amount is higher, again, has to do with the LED streetlight conversion project. So At the time of preparing the budget, we were still trying to figure out the structure of the financing for the project and how that should be best reflected in the budget. So between when the Budget Committee voted on it and the Select Board voted on it, we came up with a different method for reflecting that in the budget. So what we've come up with for the Select Board is that the LED streetlight conversion is going to be shown as a capital project, and the full expense of that project, $160,000, is shown in the capital improvement area of the budget, and there's the corresponding offsetting revenue, which is in the article that you just voted on previously. So it really kind of, zeroes out from a perspective of the impact it's going to have on the taxpayers, because we're going to be paying that off over a 5-year period, and it's really going to be the same cost as what it would be on a yearly basis for the lease of those lights from CMP. After 5 years, we'll see the savings from that. That'll be about a $37,000 savings per year. And the reason why it's not a $160,000 difference is because the Select Board also reduced by $100,000 the reserve, the money that's to be put in reserve funds for other projects or other areas. So that equates to about a $60,000 difference between the two.
So you used reserve funds to lower the impact on the current year budget?
No, they just, money that the Budget Committee had approved in reserves, the Select Board decided we didn't need to put some of that money in reserves that originally we had put in the budget. And there's good reasons for that. A lot of it had to do with the wastewater treatment plant project and decisions around how that would be financed and funded.
Are there any other questions or comments regarding debt, capital, and contingency? Do I have a motion? Which one? Budget Committee 2.3 million or Select Board 2.4? I need a motion specific. Pardon? Okay. Select Board. Okay. It has been moved and seconded to approve $2,437,595 for debt, capital, and contingency. Are there any questions or discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Passes. Okey-doke. So we have approved all of the Select Board recommendations.
Good.
So the total proposed expenditures, A through G, as voted on, Select Board number is $9,733,468. And the Budget Committee's was $9,640 and $468, but we have approved all of the Select Board recommendations. Do I have a motion for the total? And that's for the Select Board total. Is there a second? Any questions or discussion on the total? All those in favor? All those opposed? Thank you. Article 19, which is about needing approval to raise the property tax levy limit, is not necessary this year, so we can pass that. Article 20, shall the town vote to elect one person to serve on the Board of Trustees of the W.H. Pascal Fund for a term of 3 years? And Chip Late would like to be reappointed. Is there a motion from the floor to nominate him? Is there a second? Okay. Is there a second to move the motion, the nominations be ceased? All those in favor of closing the
Is
nominations?
there an opportunity for discussion?
Of course.
Well,
Does ceasing the nominations also cease discussion?
Bill, no. Do you want to
It's not a bit, I mean, just a small.
do you want to discuss, would you like to discuss this before we,
I have a question.
you have, yes? I don't know if I can answer.
Well, maybe
Who you
Chip can.
addressing your question to?
I guess maybe Chip. This comes up every year, and then I always forget to ask that what is the Pascal Fund, and why is it involved in this process?
Again, my name is Chip Late, resident of Camden. William Pasco left funds to the town of Camden to help with taking care of some of the people that have been 20-year residents in town, and we help them with some fuel assistance during the winter. It's a 3-member board. and the terms are 3 years. So every 3 years, we need to get reappointed
Okay,
to
perfect.
that. So it's part of the trust and the will that's set up with the probate court, and we're the trustees of those funds.
Okay, so it was his desire to have it managed by a separate board rather than
Correct.
with the other Town of Camden trust
Correct,
funds?
separate trustees.
Okay, perfect.
And we communicate on a regular basis with Jody, and so and the courts, so.
And is that something that town residents can apply for?
No.
Or it's
I mean,
already-
we take care of seeking out the members, the people that we can assist.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
We have a motion that's been moved and seconded to close the nominations. So may we vote on that, please? All those in favor of closing the nominations? All those opposed? Okay. Now we will vote. Chip Late has been nominated and seconded. All those in favor of Chip Late to be appointed to the Pascal Fund, please raise your hand. All those opposed? Thank you very much. Thanks, Chip. Article 21, Budget Committee. I know this is the one everybody's been waiting for. We need to elect 8 members for 3-year terms, which expire in 2020. We have 2 nominees from the nominating committee, Mary Winchell and Wendy Rich. May I have a motion and second to elect Mary and Wendy to the Budget Committee? All those in favor of electing Mary Winchell and Wendy Rich to the Budget Committee, please raise your hand. Thank you. All those opposed? We now have 6 people that have said they're willing to be nominated from the floor, and I will read their names. Sophie Romano, Jasmine Pike, Courtney Sukforth, Beth Doan, Tyler Smith, and Susan Teagan Kraft, and they will fill the remaining seats for this term. Is there a motion and a second from the floor to nominate these 6 people to the Budget Committee? Is there a second? All those in favor? Thank you. All 8 are elected. To elect 5 members for a 2-year term to expire in 2021 to serve on the Budget Committee. Raylene Hunt, Judy Shelby, sorry, Lorna. Lorna Dietrich Cummings and Barbara Oland have all volunteered to be nominated from the floor. So I need a motion to elect those 4 to the Budget Committee. Is there a second? All those in favor? Okay. Pardon? No? Okay. We have one more opening. Are there any nominations from the floor for the 5th opening for the 2-year term?
She left us down on the committee.
Seeing none. That'll be an opening will need to be filled before budget time next year. To elect 1 member for a 1-year term to expire in 2020 to serve on the Budget Committee. And we need a nomination from the floor. Anybody want to volunteer to serve 1 year on the Budget Committee? It's a great learning experience.
Oh, is that Mark Siegenthaler? Yay. He'd be great.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Mark Siegenthaler has volunteered to be nominated from the floor for a 1-year term on the Budget Committee. Do I have a motion? Do I have a second? Any other nominations from the floor?
Second.
All in favor of ceasing the nominations? Opposed? All in favor of Mark Siegenthaler being elected to the 1 year, please raise. Thank you. Mark, thank you so very much. Article 22, to elect 3 regular members and 2 alternate members to serve as a budget nominating committee for a 1-year term expiring in June 2020. Richard Thackeray has offered to be one of the budget nominating committee members. Is there somebody who will nominate him from the floor? A second?
Second.
All those in favor of Richard Thackeray being elected to the budget nominating committee? Thank you, Richard. So we need 2 more nominees willing to serve as the budget nominating committee. We'll come by.
I nominate Jeff Senders.
Jeff, are
It's
you
not
in?
that hard. It's not You just have to recruit. I just recruited a bunch of people. You'd be good at it.
She just recruited 7 people for us. Jeff? Is Jeff willing to serve?
I think he just left.
It's all about just helping to identify who in our community might need to be pulled into town government and trying to make the budget committee more diverse and representative of our town. It's not that hard. Liz would be good too, but
Well,
I can't.
they
It's
have,
hard to tell for me to see people's expressions. I can't quite.
They have to
see
be
him
willing-
shaking his head a little bit.
they have to be willing to serve before we can really nominate them. So Jeff was a no. Jeff, were you a no? Any other any volunteers? The select board will come get you.
Oh, yeah.
That's happened to many of us. All right, so that leaves us two openings on the nominating committee. We now need 2 people to serve as alternate members of the Budget Nominating Committee.
Jeff, come on. An alternate.
Was that a yes or a no? That was a no. Seeing no volunteers, thank you all. That does conclude our floor articles. Are there any closing comments from the Select Board before I ask for an adjournment motion? Mark?
Yes. I'd like to thank everybody for coming. It's wonderful to be here. It's not a very controversial year, so there are not a lot of people here. But I want to talk about something. Tourism and inviting people to Camden is very important for our town. In the last, I think, 14, 15 years, SIF has become a major, major player in bringing great people to this town, discovering Camden, keeping it a vibrant, lively, year-round community. We have an opportunity this weekend. We have the first Jazz in June, the first jazz festival for Camden. Matt Brown has put in a tremendous amount of work. There's a great schedule coming, and I recommend everybody. I already have my hat. I already have my T-shirt, and I also have already gotten. I've already gotten my. Oh, where did it go? It's in my pocket. I have my all-access pass, which is available in the town office. And the all-access pass, much like the SIF all-access pass, allows you to the Friday night dance party at the Snow Bowl, the Friday night Blue Cafe here at the Camden Opera House, Saturday afternoon Jazz in June show at the Snow Bowl, and the Saturday night feature concert, and also a Sunday brunch at 16 Bayview. Jazz brunch. It's an incredible accomplishment. If this could be a bookend to what we do with SIF in the fall, it would be a great thing for the town. So I really, hope that people will, if they can't go to everything, if you can't get your all-access pass, there are individual tickets for, some of the events are free, some have individual tickets. Please come, please share, please be a part of the town, because if we get this first Jazz in June festival underway, in 15 years we'll have as strong as anchor as SIF is for this town. It would be a tremendous achievement. So thank you for listening to that. Thank you for coming. Thank you to all my fellow board members for having me back for another few years. And thank you, everyone.
Anybody else on the board? Allison?
I would just like to say thank you, especially to our town manager, Audra, who has been, I've received so many comments about how much fun you are to work with. They're all true. We have a really exceptional staff, and I think that you do a really great job of keeping everybody together and using everybody to the best of their abilities. I also want to thank John French, because I have a lot of people, and the former select boards, a lot of people say, oh, you have this great town manager, and she's young and active and has kids and all of these things, and they assume that maybe I had something to do with that, or Jenna, because, of course we would have wanted to recruit this young, active town manager. And I really want to give credit to John and the former select board, who I didn't see, I was on the town manager search committee, and I looked on the internet and found all these people and thought, we're not just going to go with who we know. We can have anybody in the country, and surely we can find, the perfect person on the internet. and I remember talking to John about some of my ideas, and he goes, I don't know what you're thinking, that's just crazy. And he mentioned Audra, and he said, I don't know why you haven't, you didn't come up with Audra. And I said, I don't know, I don't know what it was. But he said, I've talked to like 25 people, and everybody says wonderful things about her. And I just think it's kind of funny that it was the
Old guard.
However you want to put it.
The old guard.
It's been a wonderful experience for me to have things like that happen, where you realize that, you don't know everything. And I'm just so thankful that I didn't get, I remember being very annoyed at the time that I didn't think the committee's wishes had been respected by the select board, and it all seemed very paternalistic. But I'm just, thankful for the experience that we have in this town and the people that have stuck with it for so long. It makes it possible for people like me to come in and be able to, benefit from all of that knowledge. And so thank you.
Well, I'd like to say that, I don't deserve this amount of credit. I have a fantastic staff, and most of them have come here tonight.
Yes.
So please say hello to all of them. They're here because they want to be involved, and they want to see what's going on, and they want to be present. So these are all the people.
Anybody else have any closing comments? Closing comments from the town? Yes.
Careful.
Anyway,
Careful.
I don't know if this,
Say your name, please.
Ron Stasielski just moved recently to Camden.
Yeah, which is
Ron
close to-
Stasielski just recently moved to Camden, and I'm glad I moved here. Anyway, moved to Mountainside Park, but that's not the real reason I'm up here, just so you know where I live. But anyway, there was talk about climate change and drainage issues and so forth. I don't know if this really has anything to do with it, but there are many runoffs in the park itself coming down the mountain, and still there, in very wet areas. I'm sure that's happening a lot across the whole town, a lot of mountains around, and the infestation of black flies, mosquitoes, now, brown-tail moths, ants, ticks, you name it. It's almost impossible to be outside unless you're downtown and by the waterfront. And I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this, maybe, this problem. Now, what measures, advice can the town provide to property owners to try to alleviate these problems, either now or in the future? Because I don't know about these brown-tail moths, but that can become a real problem. And the ticks, too. The ticks are really...
Audra, is
There's
there a
just so
department that you would recommend this gentleman speak to, or?
I would say the state entomologist is a great resource for a lot of this, and we're going to be having a discussion at the next select board meeting about some of this, so that would be a good meeting to tune into.
Great, so the town has talked about it and looked into possible things they can do, whether it's some kind of spraying or whatever can be, I don't know about spraying, but no. No spraying.
No. Audra, what's the date of...
What about if the spraying,
date?
if the spraying is not chemical type, they have all this organic type?
What's the date of the next select board meeting, this gentleman?
On June 18th, next
June
Tuesday.
18th. So, sir, I recommend you coming to the June 18th
Okay.
select board meeting, where you can ask some more questions and it'll be discussed.
Okay. That
And
wasn't
you
on-
said the state entomologist?
Yep, that very good resource.
And is the number
Allison
like
Canody.
Allison, what's the last name?
Canody, K-A-N-O-T-I.
Canody. Okay.
Thank you.
And that wasn't an off-the-wall concern, was it? that I had?
Not necessarily germane, but it's perfectly good for you
Well,
to ask,
drainage,
and you've got a
I
good
think-
referral.
I think the drainage and the climate change, and that might have something to do
Yeah,
with,
it's very possible.
mosquitoes and, the
Well, thank you.
wet.
Do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Always.
Do I, thank you. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Is there a second? All those in favor? And you are all welcome to stay for the swearing in of Mark, if you would like. Otherwise, thank you all so very much for coming and participating.